1 minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. We got a loaded show for you today as we take you all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I have Stuart Kovacs with me, Ryan Botcher with me, and we'll be joined by not one, not two, but three awesome guests. Cedric Maxwell is going to stop by as we'll get you set for the Eastern Conference Finals between the Pacers and the Celtics that commences this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. So he'll join us 20 minutes from now, Cedric Maxwell. Derek Stepan, former Rangers forward, he will join us at 4:40 p.m. Eastern, 1:40 p.m. Pacific today. We'll preview both the Eastern Conference Final and the Western Conference Final in hockey. We already knew that the Rangers and Panthers were set. That will get underway tomorrow evening, and it will be followed on Thursday, I believe, with you have Pete DeBoer's team and the Dallas Stars welcoming in the Edmonton Oilers. And talking about Peter DeBoer, the head coach of the Dallas Stars, is going to stop by at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time, 2:20 p.m. Pacific today. And that was an interesting hockey game last night. We'll start with the hoops. We'll get to it in just a second. But you got to see Vancouver host a Game 7. You know that the NHL, they would never say this, but they want Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to be getting into the conference final because they would love to see them in the Stanley Cup final when you have the biggest star in the sport in Connor McDavid, another top 5 player in Leon Draisaitl. And early on in that game, the third-string goalie for Vancouver was sensational. Like, that game should have been out of reach a lot earlier than what it actually was, and the third-string goalie did a sensational job. And then it's 3-0 in the third period. Vancouver, they either refused to shoot or they couldn't get a shot off. It was so bizarre. And the next thing you know, because it's hockey and all these games have crazy endings, it goes from 3-0 to 3-1, then 3-1 to 3-2, and you have Vancouver pulling their goalie with about 1:45, 2 minutes left, and they couldn't get a shot off. So it was very fitting that they couldn't get a shot off. They had one opportunity late. I believe that was blocked. But it was fitting that Edmonton won. And I know that Vancouver had a bunch of injuries. But it was fitting that Edmonton won because they dominated that hockey game. And if that game would have got to overtime, I'm not saying that Edmonton could not have won. But the momentum drastically shifts to the Vancouver Canucks in their building. And did you see, I know we all know how hockey is, right? And we know the passion from the fans. But did you see how many fans were celebrating in Edmonton. I believe right outside their stadium, they had a watch party. You know, I know the Rangers for Game 6 when they beat the Hurricanes to advance to the conference final. They had a watch party inside the arena, Madison Square Garden. I guess this was outside the arena for Edmonton. There were so many fans. Now, I wouldn't usually be someone that would want to go to a watch party to watch a game. You know, if my team is on the road for a big game and I'm not in the building, I think I would just prefer to sit on my couch. If you know of a nice bar that has the sound on, maybe. But I saw Carlos Ortiz, Carlos with the K, he was at the Ranger watch party for Game 6, and it looked awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then you see all the fans in Edmonton last night, and it looked like a grand old time. So we have the Final Four team set in hockey, the Stars going up against the Oilers, and you do have the Rangers going up against the Panthers. So loaded show today. We got a whole lot to do, only 3 hours to play. So let's get to it right now. I was watching last night the Barstool Rundown, and Big Cat proposed a question that I think is a fascinating question because you could give me 3 answers here, and I don't think any of the 3 answers are wrong. And the simple question is this: who is the best duo remaining out of the 4 teams in the NBA playoffs? You have the Pacers with Halliburton and Siakam. You have the Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. You have the Dallas Mavericks with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. And then you have the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So we all know who we could pencil into the 4th spot. That's Halliburton and Siakam. And even folks that listen to us in Indianapolis, I don't think are calling me up at 855-212-4227 and would argue differently. Halliburton's a nice player. Siakam, we know a champion, very good player. That duo is not on the level of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. But with what has happened so far in the postseason, we have seen, and we all knew Anthony Edwards was a very good player, great player, but his stardom has catapulted nationally through the first 2 rounds of the NBA playoffs, where Anthony Edwards has gone from a star to a megastar and the future face of this sport. Because what he's done so far, even though he did not play great offensively in Game 7, but for the most part, he has anchored the impossible, which was someone taking down Denver in these NBA playoffs. Denver, not in the conference finals. Denver not going to back-to-back NBA finals. Denver will not hoist back-to-back Larry O'Brien trophies. And you have seen Cat, who was a former number 1 overall pick, have his inconsistencies, but still be a very good player. Like, you know, Karl Anthony Towns reminds me a lot of, Stu? It's actually Anthony Davis, where when they are both on, they look great. They look like they could be the best player on the court. But through injuries and just so many inconsistencies, their level of play is up and down on both sides of the court. But we know Anthony Edwards is a megastar. You look at Tatum and Brown. Tatum is the star of that group. Jaylen Brown has the mega contract. Jaylen Brown also has inconsistencies. We've seen at times in the postseason him not be able to go left. We have seen with Jaylen Brown him have costly turnovers late in postseason games. He's inconsistent as well come postseason time. And then you have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, where I remember we had Avery Johnson on before the postseason started a few weeks ago. And I said, if Denver doesn't get to the championship round, doesn't get to the NBA Finals coming out of the Western Conference, who's the next team that you believe in the most? And I actually agree with him when he said this, because of the fact that now we're operating in this era of dynamic duos, that it's Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And Luka has been incredible, even dealing with an abundance of injuries. And it's just a reminder with Kyrie Irving that when he's locked in, he's one of the baddest dudes on the planet on a basketball court. The problem is he was not locked in Brooklyn. He was being a pain in the ass. He was not locked in, when he was with Kevin Durant and he was with James Harden. And you saw him also in Boston not be locked in as well. And his career the last few years has soured, even though he's always been a great player, because a lot of people just didn't think the juice was worth the squeeze. And in all likelihood, up until this postseason run, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. But now it seems like Kyrie Irving's in a good headspace, and we're all reminded of the great Kyrie Irving that we saw in that 3-1 epic comeback when the Cavs did take down the Golden State Warriors. Talent has never been the issue with Kyrie Irving. It's been up here, and then also it's been health and just staying healthy. But I look at these three duos, and I try to rank them 1 through 4. Halliburton and Siakam's in at 4th. I'm going to give you my first answer, like the best duo remaining, and then 2 and 3, I really think they're splitting hairs. But I think right now, the best duo remaining in the NBA playoffs are Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Like, you look around, when you look at the one part of this duo, who's the best player between Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, and Anthony Edwards? I think it's Luka Doncic. And then you look at the number 2 options, Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, and Karl Anthony Towns. Kyrie's locked in right now. And when Kyrie is locked in, he's a top 10 player in the sport. So you could argue that Luka and Kyrie are 2 top 10 players in the sport. Jason Tatum's top 10 player in the sport. I can't argue that for Jaylen Brown. Anthony Edwards feels like he's now a top 10 player in the sport. I can't say that for Karl Anthony Towns. So in the one spot, it's Luka Doncic and it's Kyrie Irving. Then I may be like the Raiders when they're drafting and deciding between the corner, Terrion Arnold, or Brock Bowers. I may have to flip a coin between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown compared to Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Because right now, and Edwards has been tested more in this postseason. Tatum has not been tested yet because of the first 2 opponents. And quite frankly, I don't think the Pacers are going to give him much of a test either. But right now, Anthony Edwards is inspiring. Anthony Edwards is now most people's pick to win the NBA Finals. Not only get there, win the NBA Finals. So I think you're splitting hairs with Tatum Brown up against Edwards and Cat. And Brown and Cat are number 2s on championship teams, regardless of where they were drafted. I think at their apex, Karl Anthony Towns is a better all-around player than Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown is a phenomenal two-way guard. Like, he's one of the better two-way guards in the league. But I just think with his size, his defensive play, Karl Anthony Towns has more upside. So I think you're splitting hairs. You could really flip a coin. But I would go best duos remaining in the NBA playoffs, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving 1, Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns 2, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown 3, and Tyrese Halliburton and Siakam in at 4th. And the best part about this question is, and the answer of it, is I walked around the newsroom right before the show. I saw D-Cell and Stu. And I said to D-Cell and Stu, who's the best duo remaining in the playoffs? D-Cell right away, boom. He said Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. Stu was like, I'm actually going to go Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I can't sit there and yell at Stu and call him a moron because, A, that's not very nice. But B, it's not inconceivable to say Tatum and Brown are the best duo remaining in the playoffs. And I had them ranked 3rd. So, Stu, you tell me why you go Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as the best duo remaining in the postseason when I have them 3rd. Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns as 2, and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in at number 1. But once again, it's all splitting hairs. It's very, very close.
Yeah, it's close. I thought that I like what Tatum and Brown do in terms of complementing themselves. Like, okay. I think Brown is pretty good defensively. I think Tatum can also be good defensively. I think they play off each other really well. Like, Doncic and Kyrie, there's a lot of firepower there. There's a lot of offense. There's not a lot of defense. Kind of same with Cat. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm really splitting hairs, but I just think as 2 guys that complement each other well and that are all-around players, I would pick them.
Now, going off of this, with all these players and all these duos, most to gain, most to lose, individual player. Take the duos out of it, but standing with those, let's just say with those 6 players. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and you know what? Screw it. For the fun of it, Halliburton and Siakam. Out of those players, Stu, who out of those 8 players has the most to gain with the remaining 2 rounds of the NBA playoffs? What would your answer be?
I think it's definitely Anthony Edwards.
I'm with you.
I think it's hard to make an argument otherwise. I think Edwards just that he's doing it so early, and this could be the first of many. I know we don't want to get into dynasty talk,
Sure.
but if he's able to get it,
because we just did it with the Nuggets.
yes, if he's able to do it this early, that's going to be pretty insane, and it does seem like the sky's the limit for him.
So I'm with you. Anthony Edwards is in at 1. Who's then in at 2? Because 2, I think it comes down to the conversation of, is it Luka Doncic or is it Jason Tatum? And I don't think Tatum is ever going to be the face of the league. I do feel like Tatum gets a little bit disrespected in some of these conversations, but I do think it's Luka, because Luka's a top 5 player in the league, and you put a championship on his resume this early, especially in Dallas. You know, you look at, right, the historical standpoint, Dirk Nowitzki and how great he was for that franchise. Luka gets a championship this early, and just pound for pound, like, Luka is a better player than Dirk, and Dirk's one of my favorite players of all time. And if he could go get a championship this early in Dallas, that would be phenomenal. So I would say most again, it's Edwards 1, and then it's Luka 2. But I do think we're in agreement here, Stu. And I don't want to speak for you, so correct me if I'm wrong. The most to lose is Tatum. It seems like Tatum's the guy, like Josh Allen is in the NFL or Lamar Jackson is in the NFL, where we really don't care what the Bills and Ravens do in the regular season, because they've been around both for so many years, and they've been elite in this league, and they've been so close, but yet so far. That's Jason Tatum. It's like what Giannis was a few years ago. Now, Giannis a little bit different because he had a few MVPs. Even Nikola Jokic, same thing a few years ago. Where we've seen them so many times, we see them dominate at a high level. Now it's okay, you got to get to a championship. And this could be the easiest road to a NBA Finals ever out of the Eastern Conference. First round, Heat were injured. Jimmy Butler was hurt. You dispose of them in 5 games. The last round, it's probably easier to name who was available rather than who was hurt for Cleveland. And they disposed of them in 5 games. And the Pacers, you know, they have a great offense. They have a good 1-2 punch down low. McConnell's gritty off the bench. But the most I could see this series going is 6 games. I picked the Celtics in 5. So I think Tatum has the most to lose, because some will argue, including yours truly, that the playoffs really don't start for the Boston Celtics until you get to the NBA Finals. So are you in agreement there, before we get to Cornbread Maxwell, that that Jason Tatum has the most to lose?
I am, and it's going to be next year 8 for Tatum, which is kind of crazy.
Crazy,
It
yeah.
seems like he's still really young, but he's actually starting to get to the point where, okay, he's in the prime of his career. They've surrounded him with a lot, especially the last few off seasons.
Porzingis, Holiday.
Yeah, there's a lot of good
The emergence
players
of
around
Derek
him.
White.
Yeah, so if he doesn't get it done, he's gonna. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of criticism on him.
It's funny. We were also blown away how early Tatum's Celtics really did break out, even with the Hayward injury and the Kyrie injuries, right? When they went to that conference final, you had Jaylen Brown on that team. A Scary Terry was also on that team. He didn't show up in that elimination game. And you had those guys break out so early, and they've gone on so many runs with the early success that it starts to build that narrative. Okay, we're done with them having the early success. Now you got to go win an NBA championship, and anything short of that would be a failure this year. So it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. We'll come on back. We'll preview the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA with Cedric Cornbread Maxwell, longtime Boston Celtic, and also has done a great job as their radio analyst for many years.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. The Eastern Conference Finals in the association does commence tonight with the Boston Celtics hosting the Indiana Pacers after the Pacers had an historical evening shooting the basketball, taking care of the New York Knicks in 7 games. Let's go out to Boston. We welcome in a 2-time NBA champion, the 1981 Finals MVP, longtime Celtics radio analyst, and that, of course, is Cedric Cornbread Maxwell, kind enough to join us once again on the Zach Gelb Show. Cedric, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much for doing this, and how you been?
I am doing fine, sir. Just hanging in there, getting ready for the festivities tonight.
So let me just get the vibe around the Celtics. We know how great they were in the regular season. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs, they were expected to beat an injured Heat and Cavs team, both rather quickly, and they did so in 5 games. We were talking about this to open up the show, though, Cornbread, and it's like no one's going to praise the Celtics until they have that Larry O'Brien trophy. So from a player's standpoint, when no one's really praising you and you just keep on winning, how do you kind of navigate through that?
You do exactly that. You don't worry about all those other ancillary things. You play the game. This is and this is one time I'd have to agree with something that Draymond Green echoed from somebody else when he said, this season for the Boston Celtics isn't about winning the division or having the best record. It's about bringing another banner. And I think it's Tatum and Brown's time to step up and bring another banner to the elevator.
You got some great dynamic duos remaining in the NBA postseason. You just mentioned Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You have Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, Luka Doncic and Boston's favorite friend in Kyrie Irving. We'll see Halliburton and Siakam tonight. Out of those four, who do you think that the best duo is remaining in the NBA playoffs?
I would just have to go with Brown and Tatum. Two younger players right now, dynamic, a little bit longer, bigger. I love Kyrie Irving. I think he's of all the Boston Celtics players have ever played here, especially with a guard. He was by far the most outstanding offensive player I think the Celtics have ever had in a uniform. But when I think of Tatum and Brown, what they're able to do, scoring the basketball, passing, doing all those things, I like them as well as anybody.
We know with Kyrie Irving, right? It was an ugly ending in Boston. He wasn't all in with the Brooklyn Nets, and he wound up in Dallas, and people were like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. We all know when he's locked in, he's a top 10 player. To see what Luka and Kyrie are doing right now with how you just described your feelings on Kyrie Irving, just what other emotions does that elicit when you see that team in the Western Conference Finals?
Well, I think I'm not as surprised because of the way those two play, but it's not those two. It's those ancillary players that have come in and played well. The Washingtons of the world, Lively's of the world. These guys have made a difference in what Dallas has been. Before they were just an offensive juggernaut. Now they can come back and legitimately have size and defend you on the perimeter and coming towards the basket with those guys I talked about. So that is the difference in the team now that I saw in the middle of the year when the Celtics kind of spanked Dallas to what Dallas is now.
I thought last year, as Cedric Maxwell is with us, Joe Mazzulla was in a tough spot and he was unfairly criticized, but that's the nature of this business. What have you really learned and really seen from the coach and Joe Mazzulla this year that stood out to you? I think Joe's just grown. I think, everybody grows. If you're on this earth, every day you grow, you evolve. And I think he's evolved as a coach. His personality is one where it's a little raw right now when it comes to the media. But I think he believes in this team. There was one game, before a game, in the latter part of the season. I was there maybe 3 hours before the game doing some business, and Joe was walking around the court. And he does this thing where as a magician, he has these beads, and he walks around the court for maybe 5 or 6 times. And he and I were there, and he stopped where I was at, and he said, Max, what championship did you win? I said, in 84 and 81, Finals MVP, and all that stuff. He said, I would do anything to bring a banner to the Boston Celtics. And he like had a tear in his eye. And I was like, that's how convinced I am of what he will do, to stem the tide and win a banner and, put these guys in the best possible position. People parachute in this time of the year, and now they're watching every Celtics game. They may only catch a few throughout the season, depending where they live. As Cedric Maxwell is here with us, Derek White has been really good for this team. If people have not been made aware of the game of one Derek White so far, just take me through your vantage point with what you're seeing with him.
Derek White is one of the leaders right now at the guard position in block shots. He has shot the ball extremely well. He's defended extremely well, almost to the point where he probably should have been an all-star this year. Then you have Drew Holiday, who is a world champion, who has the experience, who comes in and handles those defensive talents. It's going to be a vocal point tonight. It's going to be Halliburton. And when you have a guy that can play him like a White can play him, or Drew Holiday, it makes it a little easier, I'd say, to get out and push up on those guys because those two guards are so dynamic.
How about Porzingis? I saw Woj said they don't expect him to be back for the first two games of this series. We know he's dealing with that soleus injury. Do you have any expectation that eventually Kristaps Porzingis is going to be back for this series?
I'm trying to figure out, where does Woj get all this information? Damn, I mean, if you want to, the government has secrets, but damn, if Woj gets on it, you know what? I need to know if they're really aliens or not. Can you get up with Woj and find that out? Damn, but
we'd have to confiscate his phone, I think.
I think he's spot on with it. Porzingis wants to come back, but I think they're being slow and they're diligent about when he comes back. I've heard that it's going to be he'll miss the first couple of games. Some people say, well, if you don't need him in this series, why play him at all? I think that you have to play him in this series, the third game, because you have to ramp back up to what the NBA speed is. And you can't simulate that in practice. So, yeah, I look forward to, him coming back and getting into the rotation because he was such a huge weapon this year when it comes to shooting the ball from the outside, maybe not blocking shots, but long enough really to challenge a lot of shots. So it'd be great to have him back.
Wrap it up with Cedric Maxwell. Celtics start the Eastern Conference Finals tonight up against the Indiana Pacers. How do you think this series is going to play out? I think the Celtics are going to win it in 5 games. It's no disrespect to Indiana. We know the Celtics in Game 2s, they haven't gone their way, but I kind of think they start this thing up 2-0. They split in Indiana, and they close that sucker out in Game 5.
I like what you're saying, they're to be played. I think the Celtics have a team right now that has the advantage. But, here's what you have. You have a team that believes in themselves in Indiana. They knocked off Orlando. They knocked off a hard-fighting Knicks team. And now you're playing a team that has really been, on top of the world in the Boston Celtics. So the Celtics can't come in and, just throw caution to the wind. They have to do their due diligence again about guarding these guys. And the thing the Celtics have, the difference between the two teams is the Celtics can defend you to death. The Pacers can score you. If there's a way that you can slow down the scoring, the Celtics take huge advantage in that.
Earlier you said it's Jason Tatum's time, and you believe he's going to pull through. Why do you believe he's going to pull through and get that other banner?
Well, that's what they said about Jordan, and that's what they said about LeBron. All these guys were up in their years when they finally broke through. I think it's just Tatum's time. He's been a bridesmaid for, a couple of times, been right there at the door. Last year, I thought the Celtics were going to make history by coming back and beating Miami with the deficit that they had, and then Tatum turns his ankle in the 7th game with 1 minute beginning of the game. So I just think it's his time. Sometimes it's just written in the stars that you think about who, what, where, and if there are opportunities. But this is Tatum's time, I think, to shine. And I think that he will. He's been dynamic this year, not an MVP, but because he's had so many talented guys around him, he's been able to kind of defer. This is maybe the time for him to take over.
Who do you think wins in the West between Minnesota and Dallas?
Wow, that's going to be a good one. And I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna surprise people a little bit. I think it's gonna be Dallas, and the reason I think it's gonna be Dallas because of those other guys, the P.J. Washingtons of the world, the Lively's of the world. I think they can challenge, and offensively, I think that they can put up maybe a few more points than Minnesota. So I like Dallas.
He's Cedric Maxwell. Have a great call tonight, as always, my friend. Thanks so much for doing this.
All right, take it easy.
There you go, Cedric Maxwell here with us on the Zach Gelb Show. I think that it's going to be Celtics and Timberwolves, but can you imagine from the coverage standpoint if we have to see Kyrie Irving walking into Boston with the Mavericks for an NBA Finals? That would be a whole lot of fun. No one's going to pick the Pacers. No one will. And no one should. So sometimes when that does happen, you usually see the team that no one's picking wins. But as long as Tatum is healthy, and Brown is healthy, I don't see a way where the Pacers win this series. And his point on Porzingis I thought was interesting. I don't think they need Porzingis to win this series. I've been saying it from the start. They do not need Porzingis to get out of the Eastern Conference, but they need Porzingis to go win an NBA championship and go get the last 4 victories. But he talked about that, how you still feel like you have to play Porzingis at some point in this series, because if you are to advance, you don't want him to be knocking off the rust, which there will be rust with the injuries that he's coming off of, and we'll have a better idea how healthy he actually is. You don't want him to be knocking off that rust in the NBA Finals. I didn't think about it that way. So that was a very astute observation and an excellent point by one Cedric Maxwell. We'll take a break. When we come on back, Stu brought up this crazy NASCAR fight the other day. I did not see the video at first. I watched it last night after the show. That was bonkers. What's the craziest fight in sports history? We'll go around the room, and we will address that question next, and we'll give you an answer. 855-212-4227 on social media. At Zach Gelb, Instagram, Twitter, X. And now let's get to the latest Infinity Sports Network update with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Looking for a career path with flexibility and great pay and benefits? Go to progressive.com/careers and apply online today. It's been a while since the Celtics won their last title, their 17th in franchise history. They continue their quest for number 18 tonight when they host the Pacers in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics, the most prolific franchise in history, hasn't won it all since 2008. It's their only one since 1986 as well. They're in the conference finals the 3rd straight year, and though hoisting the O'Brien Trophy is the biggest priority, Derek White said getting this far is not an easy thing to do.
It's pretty cool. Something that I kind of took for granted, I would say. Now I was talking with Drew, and this is his 2nd time, which is crazy because Drew's done so much in this league and he's on so many good teams, but it's hard to get to this spot. So definitely a cool thing to be a part of.
The Celtics have been off for nearly a week. The Pacers are coming off a Game 7 win over the Knicks on Sunday afternoon. The Timberwolves will host the Mavericks tomorrow night in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. And from hockey, the Nashville Predators have sent defenseman Ryan McDonough back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm Rich Ackerman.
855-212-4227. That's the number to get in touch with us, the Infinity Sports Network. Give us a call, 855-212-4227.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining.
minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
The Defensive Player of the Week is sponsored by the Navy Federal Credit Union, proudly serves the Armed Forces, DoD veterans, and their families of members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. This week's player is Pacers big man Miles Turner in Indiana's Game 7 win over the Knicks on Sunday. He had 4 blocked shots. Turner's currently third in the playoffs in blocked shots, averaging 1.8 per game. So, Stu mentioned this fight between Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch the other day. This was at like some all-star event? This was an exhibition, Stu?
It was an exhibition race where didn't matter for the standings, but all you got in the end was I think it was winner take all prize of like $1 million or something like that.
Are you kidding me? That's awesome. That is wild. So I heard about it. For some reason, I'm not a big NASCAR fan. I think during the pandemic is when I became a big NASCAR fan because it's like the only thing that was on, and it was something to watch. So I ended up watching the fight last night, and that was a pretty good showdown. That was a pretty good melee. And I saw on AutoWeek.com, because I wasn't watching the actual race, that this whole kerfuffle started because the ill feelings between the two started on lap 1. That's what they said on AutoWeek.com when Stenhouse shoved a Chevrolet between Denny Hamlin and Busch to make it 3 wide. The move forced Busch into the outside wall. The next lap, Busch hit Stenhouse in the rear and sent the Chevrolet into the second turn wall. Busch parked his damaged race car in Busch's pit and then climbed up on the RCR team pit box and told Busch's crew chief he would see Busch after the race. You know, isn't that a wild concept, Stu? Like, for example, let's say Stu and I are basketball players, and we get into an argument on the court, and I shove Stu. All right, that's like innocuous for the most part. You get into a crash, and then your response is to ram your vehicle or make contact with the other person's vehicle later in the race. That's very dangerous, if I may say so myself. But I saw Stenhouse and Bush, they got into it, and then Stenhouse threw the first punch. And I don't know do you know who the big dude was, Stu, that was involved in that? Because there was some big dude that came just like rushing in. He looked like he could be a defensive end on the Carolina Panthers, for crying out loud. If he has any NCAA eligibility left, maybe Dabo Swinney would actually take that guy in the transfer portal and give him some NIL money. And I'm not talking about the name, image, and likeness of God. I'm talking about actual NIL money. Hey, Florida may promise you some NIL money, and then they may rescind that NIL money with that lawsuit that's pending today with the quarterback. But whoever that dude was, Stu, that dude was a behemoth. And he was like the bouncer in a club. He was like Gronkowski on Sergio Brown when he tossed him out of that game. That was absolutely wild, the entire fight, Stu.
Yeah, at first I thought it was a crew chief. It appears it's not. Usually NASCAR, the tire changers are more muscular, heavier set guys.
He looked like a bodybuilder, though.
Yeah, he did. He looked absolutely massive. So I'm guessing it was a tire changer, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out who it was, but that was crazy. So it elicits this conversation. What's the greatest or craziest fight in sports history? And I start mine, and I think it's like everyone's answer. If you grew up around when I grew up, even if it doesn't really matter the age, but everyone remembers the Malice at the Palace in 2004. And, I didn't grow up in Indianapolis or Detroit. I don't know how you feel about this, Stu. Well, you're a Lakers fan, so this may be change your emotions a little bit. But I think my favorite NBA team of all time actually may be the Pistons squad that won the championship. And I know Stu doesn't like that. But that Pistons squad that won the championship with Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, you had Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince. In a weird way, which was sloppy, aggressive, low-scoring, physical basketball in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, I loved that Pistons team that was coached by Larry Brown. So, and Larry Brown won an NBA championship with them. I love that team, Stu. I'm sure you love that team too, right?
Yeah, that was a not happy experience losing to them as a Lakers fan, but I can see why you would like them because as a neutral, I would probably like them too.
Yeah. That was the Lakers team, right? With Shaq, Kobe, Gary Payton, and Karl Malone.
Yeah.
The Lakers had those two teams in our lifetime. It was that.
Yeah.
That
I know
grouping,
where you're going with this, yeah.
And then the other one, it was Dwight Howard.
Steve Nash,
and Kobe.
Yeah, and Pau still.
Oh, and Pau Gasol was still on that team. What? They made the playoffs, right? Or did they get hurt and didn't make the playoffs?
That was the year Kobe tore his Achilles right before the playoffs. They were the 8th seed, and they got swept by the Spurs.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
That team, I thought for sure they were going to win a championship.
As did I.
And then Kobe didn't win those two other championships. That came afterwards, right? Those two other championships that he ended up winning?
That was before Nash and Howard. So they won the two, and then they traded Bynum for Howard, and they signed Nash as kind of like try to retool the team and try to
so they already
advance
won those two extra championships?
Yes. He had all his rings at that point.
Oh, gotcha. Wow, I always thought it was the other way. But
yeah, they won in 09 and 10, and I think this was 2012 when they got Dwight Howard.
Because that was then probably the belief of, now they bring in this team, he's going to catch Jordan. Now that you say you're right on that. But anyway, that's the craziest fight I've ever seen in sports history. And it's not just because it was player on player. It was also player on fan. Like, do you remember the Pistons fan that came onto the court that looked like Turtle from Entourage? And every time it's like, this day in sports history, Malice at the Palace, I see Turtle, Jerry Ferrara tweet. That was not me. And then you had Ron Artest just lying on the scorer's table. And I guess that fan threw the drink at him, and then he goes into the stand, and then Steven Jackson goes into the stand. I was looking back at the suspensions from that. So that happened early in 2004, early in the season, November of 2004. Ron Artest was suspended for the remainder of the season, regular season and postseason. He missed 73 regular season games and 13 playoff games. Steven Jackson missed 30. Jermaine O'Neal originally got hit with a 25-game suspension, got reduced to 15. Ben Wallace got 6. Anthony Johnson got 5. Reggie Miller got 1. Chauncey Billups got 1. Derek Coleman got 1. And Eldon Campbell got 1. So that ended up being the suspensions from the Malice at the Palace. And I have never seen anything like that. Stu, what is the greatest fight or the craziest fight that you want to bring up in sports history?
So mine was from 1998, Yankees against the Orioles. Yankees are in the midst of one of their best seasons of all time. Bernie Williams hits a 3-1 home run off Armando Benitez.
Burn, baby, burn.
And then next pitch, Benitez plunks Tino Martinez in the back, upper back, clearly throwing at him. And then a brawl breaks out. And, they're just pushing and shoving at first, but then it goes into the dugout.
Yep.
Graham Lloyd and Benitez in the dugout. Strawberry comes in the dugout, sucker punches Benitez.
Oh.
It was one of the more crazier baseball fights I've ever seen.
Armando Benitez. That falls into the long line of Mets closers that have tortured me. Braden Looper, Armando Benitez. Ugh, you could just go on and on and on. Remember when Billy Wagner blew that game up against the Yankees in the regular season Subway Series? Ugh. Just
Aaron Heilman.
Oh, stop. Back to Edwin Diaz now with how he's performing as of late. Guillermo Moto actually ended up going to the Mets. He got into it with Piazza in spring training. Piazza, I've had him on a bunch. Roger Clemens, by the way. I hate his guts. My least favorite player ever. Roger Clemens with roid rage in the World Series throwing the bat at Piazza. Oh, I thought it was the ball. Like, that makes it any better. That punk Roger Clemens, who should be in the Hall of Fame, but I can't stand him. So I wasn't expecting to go on a rant about Mets relievers and hating Roger Clemens, but Stu brings up Armando Benitez, and that was just a terrible part of my childhood, even though he was on the Orioles in the fight that you were mentioning. All right, Botcher, what do you got cooking for me today?
Okay, so my first thought was, of course, Rougned Odor and Jose Bautista in 2016. Jose Bautista had a dirty slide into second base after being hit by a pitch by Jesse Chavez. It wasn't really a long fight.
No.
He got absolutely cooked by Odor, but it's memorable in the way that
It's like a down go Frazier moment.
down goes Frazier, but there's also a bunch of memes from that.
Yeah.
To where you can't go wrong with saying it's one of the best fights ever. But I also looked up other great fights. 1979, the Bruins at the Garden.
Yes.
Jumped in the crowd and started
Mike
fighting more
Milbury.
fans. So that's another one that you could say.
So I was going through this last night because I was thinking about this, and I always remember I've been told the Milbury story for all those years, Rangers and the Bruins. You see the fight at the end of the game, and then it ends up into the stands, and then Milbury rips that fan's shoe off, and then he's hitting a fan with the shoe. That was a classic Bruins and Rangers with Mike Milbury. John Chaney and John Calipari, when Chaney stormed the press conference room when Calipari was at UMass. He's like, "You're too good of a coach to be doing that stuff. I'll kill you. And he had to get grabbed out of the room. Pete Rose and Bud Harrelson is always a classic one. But for me, it's Malice at the Palace is the first one that I think of. 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. Let's go to Dave in Hershey, Pennsylvania. He's next up on the Zach Gelb Show. Dave, what's cooking?
Well, I got to agree with you. The Malice in the Palace is by far the worst fight of all time. But two you're forgetting. Maybe not a brawl, but bad fight. Nolan Ryan putting a thumping to Robin Ventura was my favorite of all time. But then before my time, the Rudy Tomjanovich punch that ended his career, that was a rough one. For anybody who was a great athlete like Rudy Tomjanovich was, to be cut short because of a blast from a monster of a man. That's the one that I think was most costly. Besides all the suspensions from the Malice in the Palace, Rudy Tomjanovich was a great player.
Dave, appreciate the time. Thanks so much for calling us. By the way, when you do a show like this, you got to interact with a lot of great listeners. I met a guy who is built like he is the Incredible Hulk. He is really strong. But this guy by the name of Sean Weaver, I met him at the D.A. Bob's Bar Show. He listened to D.A. for years. He listens to me. He listens to Maggie and Perloff. Really good dude. And wants to eventually get in the sports broadcasting business. He told me this morning, and his mother listened to the show. Mother listened to the network when it was CBS Sports Radio, now the Infinity Sports Network, that unfortunately his mother passed away, Lori Weaver. She was a big Steelers fan. She had a short battle with cancer, and she passed away Saturday. So we're sending all the best to Sean, his father, and his family. Just wanted to reach out and send my condolences on the air. I'm going to write Sean a condolence note as well and send it to him. But he listens to the show a lot in South Carolina and really do appreciate his friendship and him listening to the show, and just wanted to send his family my condolences on the passing of his great mother, and Lori Weaver, who passed away over the weekend after a battle with cancer. So may she rest in peace. It is the Zach Gelb Show right here on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a timeout, and we're coming back with more right after these short messages.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
And away we go. Hour number 2 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We were talking about that brawl over the weekend with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Bush, which was just a wild fight. It ended rather quickly, especially when you had that big bulldozer guy come through and basically just prevent everybody from fighting and kind of diffuse the situation. But that was very compelling to see. So we were doing some of the craziest fights in sports history. And so far, we already mentioned, Ryan Botcher had Odor Batista. Stu mentioned Armando Benitez and Darryl Strawberry. I, of course, mentioned Malice at the Palace. We talked about John Chaney against John Calipari, Pete Rose against Bud Harrelson. We mentioned the Nolan Ryan fight. The Rangers and the Bruins with Mike Milbury going into the stands to fight the fans and ripping a shoe off of a fan and hitting the fan over the head with the shoe. We got a few more that were thrown in. Breadman on Twitter. I wonder if that's Artemi Panarin. Probably not. He said, how about Colorado and Detroit hockey 98? Yeah, that was like a 15-minute fight. Even the goalies did throw down. I remember, and it's fitting because we have Peter DeBoer coming on an hour 20 from now. Stu, when you had DeBoer's Devils in 2012 go up against Tortorella's Rangers, and before the game even started, there was fisticuffs before the puck dropped, or right when the puck was dropped. And then you had DeBoer and Tortorella just going at one another with, I want to say it was Pierre Maguire. I forget who the ice side announcer was. I want to say in between the benches it was Pierre Maguire, but he was right in the middle, and he heard all the pleasantries that were exchanged between those two gentlemen. So that was one that I remember. Latrell Sprewell and PJ Carlissimo, and Two-Tone Tony. He chimes in. And Stu, this is one that you remember very well in the ALCS. It was Pedro Martinez and Don Zimmer. And I thought that was always a great overreaction by the Red Sox, because it was Kareem Garcia who got hit, and then Manny Ramirez was at the plate. And
with Clemens pitching,
yeah,
speaking of Clemens.
Who is a jerk. And if Roger Clemens is close, you probably think it's intentional, but he wasn't that close to hitting Manny Ramirez. He wasn't.
It was high. It was a high pitch.
And then you have the benches clear, and the next thing you know, Don Zimmer, an old man on the Yankee staff, he gets tossed by Pedro Martinez. Like, Martinez grabbed him by the head and threw him on the ground. And some Red Sox fans, well, why was Don Zimmer charging at Pedro Martinez in the first place? Still, like, if your grandfather charged at like a 20-something-year-old, it doesn't mean that 20-something-year-old needs to throw him on the ground. So those were some wild fights. I will say, as a youngster, I mentioned earlier, Clemens throwing the bat at Piazza. I was actually at that game when you had Sean Estes throw behind Clemens, and I think he was trying to hit him, and he threw behind him, Sean Estes, who's become a friend. But in that moment, even as a young kid, I was like, oh, you dope. You got to hit Roger Clemens. And Estes actually hit a home run in that game. Piazza also hit a home run in that game. And that was one of my young memories as a kid at a sporting event, Mets-Yankees, and the whole stadium was serenading Roger Clemens. Roger, Roger, Roger. I think Timo Perez also had a home run in that game, or a crazy slide. Maybe he stole home. I think he stole home in that game. And a fan ran on the field. So that was a wild game as a young Zach Gelb was at Shea Stadium for Mets and Yankees. So those are some fights that we have discussed, some of the wildest fights in sports history. All righty, so Xander Schauffele, after years and years of coming close, years and years of heartbreak, he wins a major championship over the weekend at the PGA Championship. Was sensational from the start with the record-breaking performance, and then at the end of the tournament, we're on 10, he bogeyed. Everyone's like, uh-oh, here goes Xander Schauffele again. He's going to start Schauffeleing again. I don't even know if people say that, but I just did. And then he bounces back with birdies on 11 and 12. 17 goes into the sand, no problem. 18, his feet were in the sand. The ball wasn't, but he had to step inside the bunker, delivered a great shot up and down. Birdies putts in and avoids the playoff with Bryson DeChambeau to win the PGA Championship at 21 under par. So off of that conversation, we have done this before in your favorite athlete to never win a championship. But that usually doesn't elicit the response of current athletes. For example, like one of mine was the performance of Larry Fitzgerald last time we did this, and that great run up against the Steelers and the 4 playoff games where some guys dream of having seasons like that. Larry Fitzgerald did that in 4 games and not result in a championship. Like I would have loved to have seen Vince Carter win a championship, Henrik Lundqvist. But if we just keep it to active players, off Schauffele finally pulling through and getting a major championship, out of the 4 major sports right now, there are 4 players to stand out to me that have not won a championship that I would love to see them one day win a championship. So we start off in the NBA, and I think Jason Tatum is the answer. He's been so close. He's been in the league now, Stu, you said, 8 years for Jason Tatum?
8 years, yeah.
Which is crazy. But how early he got to the Eastern Conference Finals, has been to one NBA Finals before. They've been close the last few years in trying to raise banner 18 for the Boston Celtics. My NBA player out of the active players that has put in the time, right, has had some heartbreak, that you would like to see him get over the top of the mountain and stand on top of the mountain and be like Johnny Drama and chant victory, is Jason Tatum. In Major League Baseball, this guy's hurt. He's had a lot of bad luck recently, can't stay healthy. He is an all-time great player, but you may look back at his career like Ken Griffey Jr., where it's like, wow, he's an all-time great, but what would it have been if he could have stayed healthy in a lot of those years where he was hurt? And that's Mike Trout. Now, whenever Mike Trout comes back and he plays, Mike Trout, he needs to request a trade from the Angels. He was there with Ohtani for a few years. They couldn't even get to the playoffs. He's been to the postseason one time. They got swept. His career, as great as it is getting wasted with the Angels. So I don't know how many more good years he has left because he keeps on getting injured, and that's unfortunate. But he's only 32 years old. He turns 33 this summer. Mike Trout, Stu, I just don't know if he has it in him to request a trade. Like, remember when Damian Lillard waited and waited and waited, and eventually he went through with it because they made the draft pick of Scoot Henderson. And once he saw that, he was like, okay, it's my time to go. But he didn't want to be the bad guy. And everyone at that time, like, we were on in Portland. People in Portland, I remember, were calling me saying, we don't think Dame would be the bad guy if he left. We actually understand with how dysfunctional this organization is. Mike Trout's in the same spot, where I think Mike Trout thinks he's going to be the bad guy. But no one else would view him as the bad guy if he requested a trade from the Angels. But Stu, it kind of feels like it's just not in his personality. Like, that could be another thing. Some guys like to be in obscurity. Some guys, when you are the star, like to be able to go out and not get recognized everywhere you go. And it feels like Mike Trout likes to live in the obscurity of being a Los Angeles Angel and never making the postseason, which is wild. Like, I don't know if he'll ever request a trade. But you saw that emotion, right? A few weeks ago when he was hurt and he's like, oh, here we go again. It's sad. For a great player, Stu, it's really sad what his career has turned into because he never has a chance to win.
Yeah, and he should have multiple rings by now, considering how great he is.
At least one.
At least one. And we haven't even gotten a lot of playoff baseball either. I think it's just 3 games is all we've got from him. Just imagine how good he would have been playing in the playoffs in those pressure-packed situations.
Yeah, like, for example, we talk about, at time, guys who are younger. You got to see Mookie Betts now in 2 places win championships. And what that does for a popularity of a player when you dominate in the postseason. Like, how about Juan Soto with the Nationals and how young he was when he won a championship? And we all know Trout is a great player, but I don't think he's a popular player. And a big reason because of that is because the guy doesn't have much of personality, number one. But there's a lot of great players who don't have personality, but you never see him in the postseason. And baseball is such a regional sport, so when you have these national moments, you need him to be a part of them. And like the All-Star game, it doesn't really do it for me anymore. But the All-Star game is still a great marketing opportunity for Major League Baseball because it's a national moment in a regional sport. Postseason is a national moment in a regional sport, and we've only seen Mike Trout once in the postseason. So baseball, it's Trout. NBA, it's Tatum. Players that have not won a ring yet that are active, that I love to see win one. NHL. This guy punched through to the conference final last night as they did take down Vancouver in 7-game, but it's the best player in the sport pound for pound. It's Connor McDavid. So I would like to see Connor McDavid win a ring. The only thing I will say to Connor McDavid, Peter DeBoer joins us at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time today. Peter DeBoer is a longtime friend, coach of the Dallas Stars. So I don't know if he would love that answer if he heard that. And also, I don't want Connor McDavid getting a ring at the expense of my Rangers, okay? Like, if the Rangers don't win the Cup this year, and I'm not disrespecting Florida. I told you before the postseason started, I think Florida is the best team in hockey. That was going into the playoffs. But if the Rangers don't win the Cup this year, and they're the biggest underdog right now to win the Cup, even though they have the most points in the regular season on the odds. But the Panthers are great, the Stars are great, and we know the Oilers, with that 1-2 punch of McDavid and Draisaitl, is just so lethal. But the Rangers this year, they just have a feeling, and I don't like the team of destiny, because whenever you call it team of destiny before they win the championship, they always lose that next round. But this Ranger team, in my lifetime, this is a team that going into the year, I thought they were good. I didn't think they were great. Even halfway through, I thought they were good, not great, but they just keep on finding a way. And like with a month and a half left in the season, I'm like, okay, this team could do it. And everyone crushed them at the deadline. I did not. I would have loved to get Gensel. That was the guy that wanted him. But Roslovic and Wenberg, you know, they're not difference makers, but they haven't been negatives. So, you know, last year they went all in with Tarasenko and Kane, came up short. That didn't even get out of the first round. They blew a 2-0 lead. It was embarrassing. You know, Stu's still smiling about it because he's a disgusting Devils fan. But, you know, maybe I'm just hoping this is their year. That's all I will say. But players that have not won rings, NBA Tatum, NHL Connor McDavid, and Major League Baseball Mike Trout, active players that you like to see win a ring. And then in the NFL, it's Josh Allen. That Bills fan base has never won a Super Bowl. They got to 4. They lost all 4 in a row. You've seen them get close recently. An AFC championship game. We know the divisional round dysfunction that they've had this year, the 13-2 game a few years ago. Josh Allen is a top 3 quarterback in the sport. My personal rankings, Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, Allen 3, Lamar 4, and right now entering this season, C.J. Stroud in at 5. I've been saying that now for months. But Josh Allen, I would love to see win a ring, even though his team plays in my division, but that would just be some parade with Bills Mafia, and it'd be so well-deserved. So those are the 4 active players, 1 per sport, NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL, that I'd like to see win a ring. Stu, who are some others that you want to add into this conversation, my friend?
Yeah, so in the NBA, mine is Damian Lillard. I think
that's a good one.
He, put the Trailblazers on his back for all those years. He finally got out of there. I know you mentioned him when talking about Trout. Now he's
stuck with Doc Rivers.
Yeah, so that's problematic for him, but he's with Giannis. He still has a few years left of being a really good player. I'm hopeful that he can maybe get one, but
I'm fascinated what they do next year. Because Giannis was hurt this year. Dame was hurt this year. They fired the coach. They screwed the coach. And then you bring in Doc Rivers, and it was just such a uninspiring hire. Like, if this was 2009 and you hired Doc Rivers, okay, standing ovation, job well done. But in the year of 2024, it made no sense. So, but yeah, Lillard, he was one of my favorite players for a while. And then it's not that I started to dislike him, because I still do like him a lot. It's just with all the drama year in and year out, and he just didn't have the cojones for a while to request a trade when many wanted him to. In one breath, he respected, but in another part, it was the same conversation, and it just bored me. So, yeah, I would have no problem seeing Damian Lillard win a championship.
Now, Major League Baseball, I'll go Bryce Harper. I think just that electric personality, came close with the Nationals. He left 1 year too early, went with the Phillies. They've had some really good teams. They're really good again this year.
And that's a rock star personality, Bryce.
It's the personality why I have him on the list. I just think it'd be cool to see him win.
By the way, how about Anthony Gallo, who we work with?
Uh-oh.
This guy, and I understand being a fan of your team, but can you be a little bit objective? This is the second year in a row around here. I've had people that can't be objective. At the same conversation with 3 different people in back-to-back years. A year ago was Pete Hoffman, who's a producer down the hall, and Hot Take Hickey, where about this time last year I said, the Phillies are better than the Mets. And they looked at me all and they were like, no, you're stupid. You're crazy. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And then a month ago, still early in the season, I said to Gallo, the Phillies are better than the Mets. He's like, bro, what are you talking about, bro? Bro, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, bro? And the Phillies are now 34-14, and the Mets have no personality, no buzz, no fanfare with them. They're a dreadful 21-26. So, come on. Knock some sense into your buddy Gallo's head, all right, Stu?
I'll try. I'll do my best.
Give me other players here.
I've 2 in the NFL that I was between. One's a little bit of a homer pick. It's Khalil Mack. Now, I think it's not
I thought you were going to say Derek Carr.
It's not Derek Carr. No. It is Khalil Mack.
Stu's a Raiders fan, for people that don't know.
Yes, and probably one of my favorite players ever. Just a dominant defensive force. He was on probably the best Raiders team of the last 20 years.
But now he's with the Chargers.
Well, that's the complicated thing.
I thought you were going to say Max Crosby.
Yeah, I'd like to see Crosby win. But I think Mack is deserving, and he's towards the end. I would like it to not be with the Chargers. I'd like it to be with another team, but I would like to see him get a ring.
Would that really annoy you, though, if the Chargers win a championship?
I don't like the Chargers.
They have no fan base, though. And I like Jim Harbaugh. I like Herbert. Like, out of the teams you hate in that division, you hate the Chiefs more than you hate the Chargers, and you hate the Broncos more than you hate the Chargers, right? No?
I think I hate the Chargers more than the Broncos.
Wow.
I definitely hate the Chiefs the most, but I think Chargers are second, Broncos third.
Gotcha. Anyone else you got?
Yeah, Joe Burrow, and it's going to come from him at some point. It's just a matter of how long.
And hopefully he can stay healthy.
Yes.
Did you see that photo that emerged yesterday of the haircut? And did you find out it was not true? Did Botcher, do you know what I'm talking about? The luscious locks?
It looked too fake.
It looked like he was a movie character.
Yeah, like Anakin.
Yeah. I'm not going to pretend to know in that movie. What movie are you referencing?
Just the prequels for Star Wars.
Full disclosure, I'm going to annoy a lot of people. Not a Star Wars guy. I'm not. Not a Star Wars guy.
Not one of the...
You are a stereotypical looking Star Wars fan.
I'm not a big Star Wars fan. But
really?
You can't miss what they look like and what he looks like.
Yeah, I'm just not a Star Wars guy. So, like, for me to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm just BSing you to death. I'm
like
just being honest.
You've never seen the meme where it's like, I hate you, or like, I have
What's
the high
name
ground?
of the character here?
Anakin Skywalker.
How the heck do I spell the first part?
ANAKIN. Mm-hmm. Just put prequels.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Now, is that Luke Skywalker?
No. Luke Skywalker's his son.
Oh, okay.
You see, I'm your father, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Luke, I'm your father.
Yeah.
I just know the movie reference. That's about it. But yeah, he does look like, how do you pronounce that guy's name?
Anakin.
He does look like Anakin. You're 100% right. But I thought it was kind of a Jimmy Butler trolling moment. Remember when Jimmy, did what he did with his hair? I thought that's what Joe Burrow was doing. And Joe Burrow was just posing for photos like this time of the year for it to have on like his introduction. And then the other day, when you see this photo go viral, he's at practice and he doesn't have those luscious locks. So I don't know if he just did that for the photo and then cut it off, or if it was just photoshopped and it got picked up by one of these aggregators like ML Football, and then everyone thought it was actually real. So I don't know. Anyone else you got for me? Stu, you said Burrow? No, you're good?
I'm good. I got Burrow and Mack from the NFL.
Botcher, you got a player that you'd love to see win a ring that we mentioned 1,000 of them that doesn't have a
NFL?
ring?
Oof.
Anyone?
Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson.
Oh.
One of those two.
Lamar's a good one. I love Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, I saw a photo of him, and the moment he signed with the Ravens, I'm like, I can't wait to see him in a Ravens jersey. That looks like a bad man in a Ravens jersey. He is one of the largest human beings I've ever stood next to. Like, I've stood next to bigger human beings. Like, I stood next to Shaq. But Derrick Henry is an intimidating presence. Like, that is a force. The one time I had to stand right next to Derrick Henry at one of these Super Bowls. Anyway, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I am afraid to check my mentions now. I am going to get, because I'm not a Star Wars guy. Oh, people are going to be mother bleeping me to death. I know that. Well, come on back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
This is the Infinity Sports Network.
It is the Zach Gelb Show. I see that Jim Rome, the franchise here on the Infinity Sports Network, is launching his X stream, and that's going to happen a week from now. So May 28th. So congratulations to Jim Rome and obviously his entire crew. But talking about X, I just saw on my X account a video get retweeted. And I don't follow this guy, but he's popping up on my timeline. That's because I'm in the For You category, not the following category. John Heyman. John Heyman, who I used to like. John Heyman, who I used to love his columns and everything. Twitter ruined John Heyman. That is an older guy that just doesn't know how to use social media. Remember his arson judge with the whole Aaron Judge thing? And John Heyman is also one of those guys. He's an insider. He's closing in on 1 million followers on Twitter. So good for him. But he's an insider. But when he doesn't know something, that's one of my biggest pet peeves with these insiders. It's okay to just say you don't know something. And I think it was when he ended up getting the story because he's in Boris's back pocket. But when he was in Philly and I was doing local radio in Philly on 94 WIP, John Heyman every day tried to give you an update on Bryce Harper, and he had no update. Remember like Broussard during the LeBron James decision leading up to that? He was like, I'm hearing he could go here. I'm hearing he could go there. I'm hearing he could go there. It's like you predicted him, Chris, to go everywhere. So that just drove me bonkers with John Heyman. But he quote tweeted a video from SNY Jets, which is the local TV station here in New York. Remember when we had fun with the whole Aaron Rodgers vice president story, where he would have been the vice president for RFK? Aaron Rodgers revealed today he had 2 options this offseason: retire and be RFK's vice president, or keep playing football. Now, remember when we started having this conversation? And I said to Samter, I'm like, you can't do both. And Samter's like, yeah, you could. And every one of your press conferences, good line by Samter. I don't know what happened to Samter. He hasn't been here for like 2 weeks, but no, I'm just kidding. But Samter said every one of his press conferences could be like a buildup to the actual election. Like, you don't have to campaign if you're Rodgers. You could just go speak at your press conference. Oh, we're playing in Denver this week. Let me give a press conference. I'll talk to the great people of Denver. I'll do a little media call with the local media in Denver. But how wild of a statement is that, Stu? Aaron Rodgers reveals, we'll play this audio later in the show, he had 2 options: retire and be RFK's vice president, or keep playing football. Wouldn't that be the most on-brand thing ever for the New York Jets? You have Rodgers. The Achilles injury transpires in 3 or 4 plays into the season. I'll never forget that, watching that. It happens 3 or 4 plays into the season. That was when I was still in the 6 to 10. I think I'm still doing 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern time then. Yeah, I was on the air live for that. Because we had that Dr. David Chow on, the injury doc. Well, I don't know how you watch these videos, but he was spot on with the injury. And I remember being on the air for that. You know, the 3 craziest nights I think I've ever been on the air. One was when we found out who was the player? Was it Rudy Gobert that tested positive for COVID?
First, yeah.
Yeah, it was Rudy Gobert. I was on the air for that night, and I remember saying when there was speculation that Jazz game got delayed, I was like, folks, if he has what we all think he has, this is going to change not only sports, but it's going to change the world. So I was on the air for that. I was on the air the horrible night where DeMar Hamlin, we thought he died on the field, and I was on for 90 minutes after the injury occurred, and you didn't want to say that you thought someone died, but everyone thought he died. And it's remarkable how not only has he not only been healthy, made the recovery, and you had those dopes that thought that he died, and then they had a fake person in that luxury. Remember those stupid theories? And we saw him walk around the Super Bowl this year. Like, we know he played, but it's just surreal whenever you see him be upright and be okay that he survived that, because everyone that night thought he died. And then I was on the air, which one of these don't belong, the night where Aaron Rodgers had the Achilles injury, which is just so much build up to that season. Monday Night Football, first week of the season, 3 or 4 plays in, boom, out. But could you imagine, Stu, the Jets get Rodgers. Not only does he not play like any of last season, because he played it for a few plays, can't even say a series. And then in the offseason, he gets approached by RFK to be his vice president. Could you imagine if he retired and ended up being RFK, who's not going to win, by the way? But if he was RFK's vice president, so it's one thing to fail in New York and be a loser in New York as a quarterback. You would have been a loser in the political world, and you would have ended your football career to be a loser in the political world. That would have, you know how you say all the time, it would have been so Raider?
Yes.
That would have been so Jet.
100%. So Jets to a T.
Could you imagine our good friend Joe Beningo? If the Jets, are you kidding me, bro? Rodgers, he retires to go be RFK's freaking vice president? That bum, he plays 3 snaps and then retires. Where is that going? Can we get Ack in here for an update? I want to get to Derek Stepan, who's going to join us in a few moments. And Ack, who has to be here at 4:30, walks right up to the studio, probably changed the thermostat 9,000 times. And then it comes right up to the door and then walks away. I got to get to an update here. I'm all about being punctual and being on time. But that would have been wild. So that's the latest with Aaron Rodgers revealing that he had 2 options, retire and be RFK's vice president or keep playing football. Later on in the show, we will talk about Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence and what their contracts will look like. You'll hear from Drew Rosenhaus. But when we return, former Rangers forward, center for the team, Derek Stepan, going to join us. We will talk about the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Finals as they will commence tomorrow evening. I am expected to be at Madison Square Garden for their game up against the Florida Panthers. I have tickets for Game 1 and Game 5. And then we also have the Western Conference Final, as you will get to see Connor McDavid, his Edmonton Oilers, go up against the Dallas Stars. And the Dallas Stars head coach, Peter DeBoer, is actually going to stop by today in about 50 minutes from now. So we'll talk to Stepan in about 10 and DeBoer, who will join us in about 50 minutes from now. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Let's send it over to Richard Ackerman with the latest Infinity Sports Network update.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Oh, it's down to 4 in the NBA, and the Eastern Conference Finals begin tonight with the Celtics hosting the Pacers. Boston was in this spot a year ago, but came up short of the finals, and they came back with the NBA's best record this year and were nearly unbeatable at home with just 4 losses in the regular season. Joe Mazzulla's team has had a week off since eliminating Cleveland. That coach isn't worried about the long layoff.
Both are important. You have to get proper time for rest, but you also got to ramp up and re-enter the fight and create your own intensity and your own toughness. So that was the theme of today, and I feel like we're taking advantage of both. We're getting the proper rest. We're as healthy as we can be, and we're re-entering the fight starting today. So you have to be able to do both.
And they were without Kristaps Porzingis in the previous round due to a calf injury. Well, the Pacers are coming off their 7-game series win over the Knicks and are right back at it after Sunday's victory. The Western Conference Finals begin tomorrow between the Mavericks and Wolves in Minnesota. The Stanley Cup Finals, resumes tomorrow night with the Eastern Conference Finals. The Nashville Predators have sent defenseman Ryan McDonough back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Check out our new and improved website at infinitysportsnet.com. That's infinitysportsnet.com.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Infinity Sports Network, and it is the Zach Gelb Show. We're down to our final four teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Rangers will commence the Eastern Conference Final tomorrow evening as they welcome in the Florida Panthers, who went to the Stanley Cup and lost a year ago. And on the Western Conference, you saw the Oilers beat the Canucks in Game 7 last night, and that will set up the Oilers going up against the Dallas Stars. My next guest played for the Rangers, the Coyotes, the Senators, and then ended his career with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's made me very happy in life during several moments of the Rangers postseason in previous years, and that, of course, is former Ranger center and Derek Stepan, who's kind enough to join us right now on the Infinity Sports Network. Step, appreciate it as always. Thanks so much for doing this. How you been?
I've been good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. So I always loved your goal, like everyone will tell you, against the Capitals, the epic comeback Game 7 in the Garden back in 2015 to advance the Rangers to the Eastern Conference Final. I have seen it, though, I think 3,000 times in this Rangers run as they're back in the Eastern Conference Final. Relive that memory and that moment as you put the team 4 wins away from trying to get back to a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy series. Obviously, we went down 3-1, and we knew we had a big hill to climb. We kind of just chipped away, found a way to get one on the road to give us a chance to play at home in games. Play one at home in Game 5. Went on the road and said, "Hey, if we give ourselves a chance in Game 7 at home, you never know what can happen." And fortunate bounce and something that I'm obviously like, it's one of those things that you can't explain to people that to be a part of something like that and to have the puck on your stick, to have a goal like that. And Ranger fans are, the best. And I hear about it all the time, and it makes me happy that, I was able to be a part of it. And it's something that's really, really, really cool for me too.
Yeah. And I was at a lot of those games sitting on the bridge for those 2 great runs that you guys had in New York. And that moment, the bridge was shaking, and also the Marty St. Louis goal to put the Rangers up 3-1 up against the Canadiens. That's probably the 2 loudest times in my lifetime I heard Madison Square Garden with the Rangers playing in it. As a player, though, you talked about that atmosphere. You said Rangers fans are second to none. But, like, in the moment, did you realize, like, how loud the building is, or was it just all a blur for you of a state of euphoria?
Well, the Game 7 goal, it was a blur. Like, you're in the pile. You're getting everyone's in that corner, and so that one was a blur. But I was actually watching Marty's goal against the Canadiens at home because I had the broken jaw.
Yeah.
I remember jumping up and down in my apartment in New York, and I was going crazy. And the building is just so special. I mean, me and my wife talk about all the time, like, to be able to play in MSG as a player and on any team is special, but to have it be a part of your home and the teams that we had and the runs that we had, it's our home, and we love it.
So the Rangers, they took a 3-0 lead up against the Hurricanes. They lose Game 5. It looked like they were about to lose Game 6, and then Chris Kreider puts the team on his back and has that hat trick in the 3rd period, and then it ends the series and puts the Rangers back in the Eastern Conference Final. I know Kreider was a teammate for yours for a bunch of years. Just how about that moment the other night in Game 6 last week?
I think it's going to be one of those moments that he'll have like I do. It's just something that – and he's got a lot of big ones. Don't get me wrong. He's got a lot more than I do. But it's something that he'll have. And I was obviously happy for him. He's a good friend of mine. And, when he first came in the league, me and him played a lot of games together. I think out of the 500 games I played as a Ranger, I probably played with Chris 480 of them. There wasn't many that I missed out on. Really cool moment for him. I was happy for him. He's a gamer, and he just gets it done. And it's a special thing that the Rangers have going right now.
Derek Stepan is here with us. I don't think the Rangers have the most talent remaining. Like, they're a very talented team, don't get me wrong. But their team chemistry, you talk about something special, is just so elite right now. You've been on teams with probably great team chemistry, then some teams that don't have good team chemistry. When you have good team chemistry, just how important is that? Even though it seems like a simple thing, it sometimes is a little complex to kind of get everyone to blend together.
Yeah, at this time of the year, there's there's not much separating each team, and team chemistry is one that can give you an advantage. I like the way that the Rangers are finding ways to win. I mean, they've won in a lot of different fashions throughout the playoffs, and obviously they won their first 7, correct, before they had any bumps in the road, and to be able to settle it down and win another one. Yeah, I like the way that they're clicking. Your team chemistry is important. Like I said, at this time of the year, the margin of error is small, and every little advantage is what makes the teams, obviously ultimately win the last game.
And on the other side, you have this Panthers team that last year, early on, no one was talking about them when they were down 3-1 to the Bruins. They come back, they win that game 7. The next thing you know, they're in the Stanley Cup final where they end up losing to the Vegas Golden Knights. But you fast forward a year later, they're a better team than what they were a year ago from the start. And now here they are, 4 wins away from getting back to the Cup final. Just how about what stands out to you from your hockey perspective about this great Florida Panthers team?
Yeah, they I like the way that they have like this team toughness. They play hard. They're able to score with the top end scorers, and they're able to defend. I mean, and then goaltending. I mean, all the teams at this time of the year are really, really solid. I mean, you don't get to this point of the year by being a bad club. And so, obviously I think the 2 teams in the East are going to have a great series. I think it's going to be a really, really good playoff series. And it's going to come down to those little details, which goaltender can stand on his head. They both have been rock solid. Which one's going to stand up a little bit taller, and which power play is going to continue to roll, and which one's going to go the other way. So these little details at this time of the year are the difference. And those 2 teams in the East are, they're extremely really good hockey clubs, and same with the West. But that series is going to be unreal. You
talk about the toughness of Florida. Do you feel like they got to give Rempe a go in this series because he's been in and out of the lineup?
I would say for now, I mean, Peter Laviolette's done a really good job of coaching his roster. I think he'll make his decisions game by game, and he's been rock solid. So, as the series goes on, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in some. I wouldn't be surprised if you win a game, you just keep it the same way. And that at this time of the year, it's about adjustments. And, like I said, I think Lavi's done an unbelievable job of coaching throughout the playoffs. I mean, obviously they had an extremely good year, so I'm not taking anything, but I thought he's been excellent through the playoffs so far.
How about when you play with the Rangers? Maybe my favorite, well, not maybe, he is my favorite hockey player of all time is Henrik Lundqvist. And you look at what the Rangers have with Igor Shesterkin now. The Rangers have just pumped out so many great quality goaltenders in their franchise history. Just how do you kind of compare and contrast Igor and Henrik Lundqvist?
I don't know Igor personally. I was obviously out by the time he came in. I was lucky enough to play with Hank for 7 years. But Henrik was just, he's just a competitor. That's like he's obviously super talented and, a Hall of Fame goalie, but he just competes, and that's all he did every single day. He showed up, and he cared so much about winning. And, obviously we had good teams in front of him, but he was the driving force to why we had such good, runs in my time there. And, I watch Igor from an outsider, so I can't comment on, but you can see some of those similarities of like, hey, I'm going to compete. I'm going to continue to compete. So, Rangers should be extremely happy that they had a Hall of Famer goalie, and you move right to the side and you get another superstar.
The way he handles the puck is incredible, and he fires it down the ice. At times, I think he's like a forward Derek Stepan with the way that Igor Shesterkin always wants to get that stick on the puck, and he's not afraid to get a little physical. You stand in front of him. Sometimes you need someone else to take him out. Nope, Igor Shesterkin will put you on your ass. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. With the utmost respect to my buddy Hank, that's one thing that Hank was not good at, was playing the puck.
Yeah.
He had so much tape on his fingers and hands, I don't even think he could grip his stick outside of outside of his blocker hand. But Igor plays the puck well. I think these 2 teams in the East, I just like their mold and their build, the 2 of them, and I think it's going to be a heck of a series. And not that I'm taking anything from the West side, but I think those 2 East teams are going to be really fun to watch. And, hopefully maybe a little rivalry starts between the 2 of them, because they got some guys in place for a long time, the 2 teams.
Wrap it up with Derek Stepan. All right, talking about the West, you got McDavid and Draisaitl, two of the top, 5 players in the game in the Western Conference Final going up against Dallas. You know the NHL has to be loving seeing McDavid and Draisaitl advance last night going into Vancouver and getting that Game 7 victory.
Yeah, I think it's these two players in Edmonton they're just too good to not be at this point in their career. So they need to be there. I think it's great for the NHL. I think it's great for Edmonton, the city of Edmonton, to have a chance to play in the Western Conference Finals and give yourself a chance to compete for a cup again. But they got a real tough task with Dallas because Dallas is deep and balanced and they can score and they find ways to win. So another really good series. People buckle down because these two playoff series are going to be extremely good.
And DeBoer, everywhere he goes, this guy gets to a conference final. He's been in a few Stanley Cup final. I know he doesn't have a Stanley Cup as a head coach, but man, he's a really impressive coach, Peter DeBoer.
Yeah, I've never actually crossed paths with him, but I've heard unbelievable things. How he sees the game, how he connects with his players, and yeah, I mean, to do what he's done so far, it says a lot. So good for him, and hopefully he can get over the hump here in the Western Conference and take another look at a Stanley Cup.
And obviously, when I think of Peter DeBoer as a Ranger fan, I think of that brawl back in 2012 when him and Torts are going at it. Everyone's dropping the gloves right before the puck drops. I think you actually scored a goal in that game too. What do you recall from that wild night?
Yeah, I just remember Torts coming in earlier than what he normally had done and being so fired up, and no one really knew what was happening because we didn't know they had started what they have started, and Torts was like, I have to respond. So once he said it and he kind of left the room, guys were kind of like, what's going to happen? And then next thing you know, puck drop and there's 3 guys with all their mitts off. So good rivalries when I was there, obviously in the Metro, and a lot of fun.
So before we let you run, Derek Stepan, we know you recently retired. I think this past year you're in a player development role with the Minnesota Wild. How did that go for you?
It's good. Billy Guerin has been phenomenal to me as I kind of figure out what I want to do post-career. And I'm had a really fun year learning a lot and digesting as much as I could and kind of learning the other side of this game. And again, I got nothing but great things to say about Billy and, what he's helped me through in the Wild organization. They've been phenomenal to me and my family. So I had a fun year, kind of just learning and soaking up as much as I can. So it was cool.
Yeah, we see, right, Chris Drury's running the Rangers. He had a great career, and then he went the front office route. Is that something that interests you maybe one day, being a general manager and running your own club?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it seems like everybody that quits would be like, yeah, I'd love to do that. That seems like a great gig, but there's a lot of work that comes along with it, and if that's the path that I end up on, I would love to put in the work to do that. But I'm leaving it up to what Billy has. They got a lot of moving parts, and I'm along for the ride. Whatever they need me to do, I'm going to do for now.
He is Derek Stepan. Derek, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. There he is, Derek Stepan. Love watching his career. He was awesome with the New York Rangers, and now we'll see what happens in that player development role. But that goal in 2015 up against the Capitals to complete that 3-1 comeback and to get the job done in overtime. It's out of all the sports you watch, the hockey overtime, if you have a dog in the fight, it's like 13,000 heart attacks in an overtime. And even if you don't have a dog in the fight, it's just such a stressful thing to watch. But the moment the game ends and you just see the state of misery on one sideline, on one side of the bench, and the other side, it's just this like kid euphoria where all these grown men, they jump up in unison, high-pitched screams, and they all like gather wherever the game-winning goal is, and you see the goalie skates up. There's nothing like it. There really is nothing like Stanley Cup playoff hockey. And this has been a tremendous Stanley Cup playoff so far, and these Final Four teams, anyone could win. Sometimes like you look at the NBA right now, the Pacers can't win a championship. They're not going to be they're not going to win the NBA Finals. I think 3 out of the 4 teams could win. Dallas, I think the Timberwolves, and then obviously the Celtics. But you can make a case for the Rangers. You can make a case for the Panthers. You can make a case for the Stars. You can make a case for the Edmonton Oilers. So the coach of the Dallas Stars, Pete DeBoer, is going to stop by 25 minutes from now, 5:20 p.m. Eastern, 2:20 p.m. Pacific, with the Stars in the conference final going up against the Edmonton Oilers later on in the week. When we come on back, Justin Jefferson not showing up to OTAs. Who are the most valuable non-quarterbacks in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball? I got a few players jotted down. We'll run through that when we return.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
And away we go, hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on, and 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, X, Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Appreciate Derek Stepan, who joined us in the last segment. We had Cedric Maxwell join us at 3:20 p.m. Eastern Time today, and that was 12:20 p.m. Pacific. If you missed any of those interviews, you could always go to my Twitter X page at Zach Gelb. The link is in my bio, and it takes us to all the archive segments. Or if you listen to us via the free Odyssey app, you could use the 24-hour rewind function if you missed any of the show. Pete DeBoer, the head coach of the Dallas Stars, in another conference final. He's going to go up against the Edmonton Oilers, and he will join us 20 minutes from now. You have game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals tonight with the Celtics going up against the Indiana Pacers. I think the Celtics are going to win the series in 5. In the other series, I picked the Timberwolves to take care of Dallas in 6. Stu, where are you at before we get into this Justin Jefferson conversation? C's and how many? Let's start in the Eastern Conference.
Celtics in 5.
Oh, so you're with me as well?
Yes.
Oh, so we're agreeing.
Sorry.
Man, we should be like other radio shows that just contrive things and just make it fade.
Pacers at 7.
Yeah, you take the other side even if you don't believe it and just yell. That's what you should do.
How dare you disrespect the Pacers?
Yeah. And in the Western Conference, you going with so Cornbread Maxwell obviously thinks the Celtics are going to win. Then in the West, he was like, bleep it. Well, he didn't actually say that, but he was pretty much like, pretty much bleep it. And he said he was going to go with the Mavericks to take care of the Timberwolves. I'm not going to bet against the Timberwolves right now. I do believe that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are the best dynamic duo remaining in the postseason. We talked about this earlier. I have Luka and Kyrie 1, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns 2, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown 3, splitting hairs 2 and 3, and then Halliburton and Siakam in at 4. Way down below at 4. But who do you go with the West?
This one's tough. Of the last 2 series in the West, I have no feel for either series. I feel like the Nuggets-Wolves, I thought the Nuggets were dead, then I thought the Wolves were dead, and then, the Wolves came back and won the series.
And the Thunder-Mavs series, right? When
Had no idea.
The Thunder took game 2, and the Mavs were about to go up 3-1, when they made that 2-2, you thought for sure it was going to be the Thunder were going to win in what we thought was the best of 3 series. Then the Mavericks won game 5, and once the Mavericks won game 5, it's like, okay, then they're going to win game 6 because they blew game 4 in their home court. But then in game 6, it went right down to the wire where you had the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander foul that put P.J. Washington on the line, and the Mavericks ended up winning that game by 1 point. So nothing will surprise me in the West. Like, if you tell me that the Mavericks lose in 5, I wouldn't be surprised. If you tell me that the Timberwolves lose in 7, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, you could tell me anything in the Western Conference, maybe outside of a sweep. 5's probably being generous. I feel like this series is going to go 6. 6 bare minimum. I'm not going to dismiss it being 7. You got to see how Luka's leg and all the other injuries are going to hold up, but it didn't look like to bother him after game 1 in that series. Maybe a little bit in game 4 it was hurting him, but I thought that a lot of that was acting. I'm not saying he doesn't have like a legitimate injury. We know he has legitimate injuries, but anytime he like fell down on the court, he was like struggling to get up, and it was always after a negative play. But then he looked pretty damn good after that. So I'm rolling with the Timberwolves in 6. I'm just not going to bet against Anthony Edwards right now. And you saw what they did in game 7, where they outscored Denver 60-37. They were down by 20 at one point in the second half. And Ant was 6 of 24 from the field? He was dreadful. He had 16 points in the game. But offensively, he did jack, but defensively, he was a menace. And that Timberwolves defense, what they did in game 2 without Rudy Gobert against Nikola Jokic was sensational. So I'll roll with the Timberwolves in 6. Are you agreeing with me again on this?
I'm agreeing with you. I'll go 7, though. I think this goes the distance. Yeah.
There's a guy in the YouTube chat, a guy named Angel. Very nice guy. I think some people in the YouTube chat may not like him because he's been blocked by a lot of people. I don't have any issues, though, with Angel. Because sometimes I respond to the YouTube chat. And when it's positive, everyone loves when I respond to the YouTube chat. But then if I respond to something negative and just have like a little back and forth to someone, people are like, oh, Zach's sensitive. Which is just so stupid. But, I could be like everyone else and just not even respond to the YouTube chat. But this guy, Angel, he's on this thing where he thinks it's lame when talk show hosts, they pick a team in 7. Because the reason why this person thinks it's lame is because of the fact then if, let's say, Stu takes the Timberwolves in 7 and then the the Mavericks win in 7, you could in a more easier way justify why you didn't pick the team to win the series. It's amazing to me. We do a radio show here. People think there's some science to this. People think we have like this hamster wheel that's running, and it's the craziest formula. A lot of people in our industry make this job a lot more difficult than it needs to be. I'll let you know a little secret. You sit down, you talk sports, you have fun. If anyone thinks I'm picking a team in 7, because God forbid if I'm wrong, it's going to be easier to justify it, you are giving me way too much credit. I know they don't like this when I say this. I went to freaking Temple University. Don't get me wrong, a fine school. But it's not like an Ivy League school that Perloff went to. But the people that think that there's formulas behind my picks, give me a break. If I'm right, I'm right. I'll be the first one to tell you. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll acknowledge I'm wrong. But it's amazing when you pick a team and you're wrong, and people are like, oh, well, you should have more guts. You can't pick a team to win in 7? It's inconceivable to see, with 2 teams remaining in the West, a series to go to 7? So you know what? Angel, I'll listen to you. I will go Timberwolves in 6, and I'll take the C's in 5. I hope that's big and bold enough for some of the people that are listening to me.
I'll go 7 so I could be more right when I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's true. When you are wrong, and let's say the Mavericks upset the Timberwolves, you'll then be a coward, Stu. Because you'll be saying, well, I didn't really disrespect the Dallas Mavericks. I thought it was a coin flip, and I thought this series would go 7 games. Anywho, let me talk about one thing that really annoys me right now. Justin Jefferson. It's not him. I love Justin Jefferson. But Justin Jefferson not showing up to OTAs. I love how this story is getting reported. The story is Justin Jefferson's not showing up to OTAs. Everyone freaks out. That would be like, because this is the part that's not being reported, the OTAs are voluntary. Could you imagine, Stu, if we got an email from our boss, David Mayernick or Ryan Hurley, and they said, Stu, you know what? This upcoming Friday, it's voluntary to show up to work. Are you showing up to work? Don't be like a good employee sucking up to the bosses here. If the boss says it's voluntary to show up to work, you're still getting paid either way. Are you showing up to work?
I am not showing up to work.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to be honest, too. If the bosses came to me and said Friday, which I am taking off Friday to get a little earlier start on Memorial Day weekend. But if on Friday, which they always do this on Friday, and this annoys me, right, when you're on the air, because you can't leave if you're not off. They go, oh, the office will be shutting early. So I could say this because my father's in sales. So all the people in sales who aren't showing up anyway on Friday before Memorial Day because they're going to be working from home, a.k.a. they're going to start their partying festivities a little bit early, they could all leave at like 12 o'clock. When I got my first job out of college, 9:20 a.m. New Jersey, And I was working at this station, and I was literally a one-man band. Produced my show, screened the phone calls while I was in the segment hosting the show. I was the board op for the show, and I was the program director. But there was a large sales team. When they would send out that email, when I was a one-person band, and it was like, oh, yeah, everyone gets to get out of the office early on a Friday before holiday, drive me bonkers. Because I did the show from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. So there's no getting out early for one Zach Gelb. So everyone, program directors, management, sales people, promotions people, they get to get out early. I have to use an off day. So it is what it is. I'm sure everyone's playing the small violin. But that's a big pet peeve of mine. When people talk about, oh, we get to let everyone out. Like the company, they're doing us a favor. Oh, everyone gets a jump start on the weekend. What about everyone on the air? We don't get a jump start on a weekend. Could you imagine if we just did like a day of silence? They just broadcasted like a tone. You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network. We'll be back in 24 hours.
It's like the crowd noise from the games. They don't have the announcers. It's just...
Yeah.
Do you remember the day in the NBA where they were like, we're going old school? No in-crowd. There's going to be no in-stadium sound. They did that once. It sounded awesome. Now you listen to an NBA game. Yeah, someone dribbling down the court at a crucial moment. It's like an EDM concert. It's wild. I think there's something about the natural crowd sound when you get like a defense. But even that goes with like a beat because they have to get everyone riled up. Like whatever happened to days, you just show up and you cheer for your team or you boo your team. Now we got to have like a whole presentation, a whole show. But anyway, Justin Jefferson is not showing up to OTAs. So because Justin Jefferson doesn't have a new contract, everyone's like, oh, he's not showing up, so he's annoyed at the team. He probably is annoyed at the team. He should have got a new deal last year. He didn't get a new deal last year. And it makes no sense to me why we sit here on the 21st day of May in the year of 2024 and Justin Jefferson doesn't have a new contract now. Stupid. So I talked about this yesterday. I fear that the Vikings make him play through this season, then tag him after that, and then you eventually trade him for 2 first-round picks. Not only would that be a disservice to Vikings fans, it would be an enormous disservice to the quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. You would be stunting the development of J.J. McCarthy. Why is J.J. McCarthy a good draft pick for Minnesota? It's because they're loaded with talent. They have good head coach and Kevin O'Connell, offensive line. You got Justin Jefferson. You got Jordan Addison. You got T.J. Hockenson when he's healthy. You got Aaron Jones in the backfield. For McCarthy, it's all about fit. So don't do this stupid thing, Minnesota, where you play him for one more season, you play around with him, you don't give that new contract to him, and then you try to trade him a year from now for 2 first-round picks. And none of those players that you draft for those 2 first-round picks will come close to being Justin Jefferson. This is ridiculous that this deal didn't get done last year. I know it's going to cost you north of $30 million a year. I don't care. That's one of the best offensive players in football. That is a preeminent player in the game, one of them. You got to pay him. Don't be Minnesota here and mess this up. Don't get rid of Justin Jefferson. So I don't really care that he's not showing up to voluntary OTAs, but I do care that they haven't got this deal done yet. Minnesota, get it done. So, who are the most valuable non-quarterbacks in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball? Forget defense, right, with your TJ Watts and your Myles Garretts. There's a ton of them. But on offense, non-quarterbacks, who are the 5 most valuable players in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball that's not a quarterback? So I put together a list, and I'll give you the 5 players right now, and I'll put them in order. In at number 5, it's Travis Kelce. He is the Robin to Batman. Batman being Patrick Mahomes. I know Kelce slowed down a little bit last year in the regular season, but come playoff time, he was sensational. Trent Williams. On this show, we love offensive linemen. We love big boys. A lot of other shows, they'll be like, oh, speed. We only talk wide receivers. We only talk running backs. The NFL, I hate to be cliche here, but you win in the battle of the trenches. And Trent Williams, for a long time, has been such a great player in this league. So Trent Williams in at number 4. Number 3, it's Justin Jefferson. Number 2, it's Tyreek Hill with how great he is And then number 1, it's run CMC and Christian McCaffrey. I think those are the 5 most valuable non-quarterbacks on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL. Stu, before we get to Peter DeBoer, you got a few that you like to throw in the running here?
Yeah, I have a few as well. You mentioned Kelsey. I have another tight end that I think is very valuable. He got injured this year, but Mark Andrews is someone that is extremely valuable. It's kind of the security blanket for Lamar Jackson. So I think he is, in terms of non-quarterbacks, very valuable. I'll also go Quentin Nelson. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen in the league. Guards and centers don't really get a lot of love. So
remember that video of him screaming on the block, and then it wasn't actually, it was altered?
Yeah.
That always stinks when you thought something was real and spectacular, and then it's altered. Who else?
And I'll go 2 receivers here, Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams. Just utter class, just incredible playmakers. I think Adams would wish he had a better quarterback these days, but I still think those 2 guys are extremely valuable and talented.
Botcher mentioned the name earlier. You got to throw Derrick Henry in that conversation. He mentioned it for a different topic of conversation. I'll throw one more. Maybe this guy, in terms of a national talking point, took a step back in terms of value because of what we saw from Puka Nacua this past year. But Cooper Kupp, that guy won a Triple Crown, and I'm not talking about horse racing, and also won a Super Bowl MVP. So I got to throw Cooper Kupp into that conversation. All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will go from talking NBA to football, now back to the ice when we return. Peter DeBoer is in another conference final. He's going to join us, and he will preview his Dallas Stars series as they do take on the Edmonton Oilers when we return in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
All righty, the Final Four is set in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the East. You know, you have the Panthers going up against the Rangers. In the West, you have the Dallas Stars going up against the Edmonton Oilers. The head coach of the Dallas Stars is, of course, Peter DeBoer, who's kind enough to join us once again on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Coach, congratulations. Thanks for the time, and how you been?
Fantastic, Zach. How about you?
Well, I've been fantastic, and I appreciate you jumping on board with us. So over the weekend, when Duchesne scores that goal to send you guys to the Western Conference Final in an epic overtime game, just relive it for me and take me back to that.
Yeah, you know what? It was, just a lot of emotion, right? We finished with the second best regular season record in the league behind the Rangers. Win the Western Conference during the season, and the bonus for that is you get the Las Vegas Golden Knights in the first round and the Colorado Avalanche in the second round, the last two Stanley Cup winners. So it was quite a gauntlet of teams, and credit to our group. They didn't make excuses. They just kind of rolled up their sleeves and dug in, and but it was a relief to get through both those teams, because you could argue they're two of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league.
And we know how talented your team is, but the mental toughness of this team really stands out. You guys were down 0-2 to Vegas. You win that series. You lose game 1 up against the Avalanche in crushing fashion, and then you pull off 3 straight, and then you go on the road and win a game 6. Just how about the mental toughness of this group, and how do you kind of get the feel of your squad in the locker room, and you see that resiliency?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question, and not to pump our guys' tires any more than you already are, but Colorado had the best home record in the league, and we won 3 games in Colorado in that series, including the eventual elimination game. So just big character test, gutty efforts by our group, no excuses. And you know what? When I look back, now I'm not surprised. We've been playing really good hockey for a while now. Obviously, the trade deadline, picking up Chris Tanev kind of solidified our defense. But even prior to that, we were playing the right way.
Going back to the first round, you've been around in a bunch of spots and used to coach the Vegas Golden Knights. And we know what happened last year when you guys lost to them in the conference final. When you were able to defeat them, what did that mean to you personally? Where obviously you're happy, but then some of the guys on the other side.
Yeah, you know what? It was a little easier this year than last year. I think you're a year removed. Last year when they beat us, my feeling was if we couldn't win, I really hope that some of those players and some of the people I worked with there in my time would get an opportunity to win, because there was some fantastic players and people that that I developed relationships with while I was there. A year later, you're another year removed, and they did win. So it was almost a feeling like, okay, you had your turn. How about we get a turn now? But I'll tell you what, that was a war of a series. Went 7 games. I mean, Vegas was much better than their record. They had a ton of injuries all year and ended up getting healthy for playoff game 1. That roster top to bottom, I believe, was better than the Stanley Cup roster that we played last year in the conference finals. So that was a big task to come out of the gate and start the playoffs with.
Coach, how do you handle the emotions of these games? Because we were talking about it, Peter DeBoer, before you got on, especially these overtime games. If you have a dog in the fight, you have like 10,000 heart attacks in these games. And if you don't have a dog in the fight, they're just equally as stressful. You've been in 4 of the last 5 conference finals. How the heck do you just stand upright still after all this craziness?
Drink heavily, Zach. I drink. I think what happens with experience, you learn to roll with it better. I think as a young coach, my first playoff run was with the New Jersey Devils, right up the road from you there, and we went to the Stanley Cup Finals and lost in 6 to LA. And then I had another few runs in San Jose in my next stop, one to a final, and then a couple conference finals. So I think every time you go on a deep run, I think you learn to manage the emotions of it a little bit better.
Yeah, sources say I can't confirm or deny this story. I may have been underage, but I think you made me drink heavily when your Devils beat my Rangers with that Adam Henrique. Oh, it still drives me nuts to this day.
I was going to bring that up when you asked me about the Matt Duchene goal. What it reminded me of, Adam Henrique knocking the Rangers out at the Prudential Center that night, which was, still one of the highlights of my career. I tell people all the time, unless you're living and coaching and working in the New York, New Jersey area, that rivalry is crazy. I mean, I lived in Madison, New Jersey, and the town was absolutely split between Devils and Rangers fans. And, I think that can be said for every town in New Jersey and New York.
Pete DeBoer here with us. By the way, what is your drink of choice?
I'm now, because I'm living in Texas, I'm a Tito soda with a splash of lime.
Like it. Those home games, by the way, wild. The Stars, they have a great fan base. I've been really impressed with the fan base the last 2 years watching them since you've been the head coach.
Yeah, they really have. And, and I worked in Vegas for 3 years, which is probably the craziest hockey environment in the league. But I'll tell you what.
The pregame ritual in Vegas. I went to Knights Oilers this year during the Super Bowl week when we were out there. I could have left before they even dropped the puck in the ice. It was wild.
Yeah. But as far as like just sheer fan energy in the building, Dallas, Texas does it as good as anybody. These people are on their seats. It's they're having fun. Everyone's got a drink in their hand, and more hockey knowledgeable base than I would have anticipated. But I shouldn't. I mean, they've been around for almost 30 years. So, it's been a real pleasure working here and our group playing in front of those fans down in American Airlines Center.
Pete DeBoer here with us, the coach of the Stars. They'll go up against the Oilers in the Western Conference Finals. Stars had the most points in the West this year. We know how great the Oilers team is. We saw their excellence last night where they just dominated that game. I know it got close late like most of these games do. When you were watching that Oilers game last night, you know the team, and obviously you played them throughout the year, but what really stands out to you about them?
Well, I think a lot like us. It's a team that went on a deep run last year, recognized that they had some shortcomings and went out and addressed them, for Edmonton, Skinner looks like he's playing back at the level he needs to play at in the playoffs to win. But they're also deeper on defense and deeper up front. When you've got guys like Matthias Janmark on your fourth line, who I've had the pleasure of coaching in Vegas, you're a pretty deep team. And Connor Brown on the fourth line, like that, you've got some depth your group, and that's with Adam Henrique, our old friend, on the injured sidelines. I assume he's going to be back here at some point in the series, if not game one. So they're a much deeper team than they were a year ago, and you've always got that two-headed monster in McDavid and Draisaitl, who really have been two of the best, if not the best players in the league the last 8-10 years.
Pete DeBoer here with us, and I know this time of the year every coach is going to say, guys, stay out of the penalty box. But their power play is just unreal, right? We know top in the league. You mentioned every one of the great players that the Oilers have. As a coach, when you say to your guys, hey, stay out of the penalty box, you don't want their physicality to go away. So how can you still be physical but be smart up against this Oilers team?
Yeah, it's a great point. And then that is priority one. I mean, if we put this team on the power play 4 or 5 times, they're going to make you pay. For our group, it's easy. We were the least penalized team in the league all year. We managed to play physical and heavy and hard and did it without taking penalties. I believe we're the least penalized team still left in the playoffs. So, it's not like we have to rewire our group in order to do that. It should just be business as usual.
Wrap it up with Peter DeBoer. Talk to me about your goaltender, Ottinger. Every night, he's just been sensational for you guys, it feels like.
He has. And you know what? Like a lot of great starting goalies, he's also a leader in the dressing room, but it hasn't come easy this year for him. We lost to Vegas in the conference finals last year. He was playing injured. He had surgery immediately following the season, missed his whole summer, came back this year in September, had a good start, then got injured again, was basically out until Christmas. And then, really struggled finding his footing the second half until just before the playoffs. And he's been on an absolute roll. I think a lot of it just healthy and feeling good about himself again. And, we were playing pretty well in front of him too, but he's always there with a big stop. And his numbers when the game's on the line, third periods, overtimes are off the charts. So that's the kind of goaltending you need.
You never know how youngsters are going to respond this time of the year. We know the first season Wyatt Johnson had, but for him to be 21 and the jump that he made year 1 to year 2, I know it's not unexpected, but man, what a special player you're coaching right now.
Special player. He's hard to describe because he's just unflappable. Most young players come in and have highs and lows, and you have to take sometimes 2 steps back to take a step forward. This kid's, we plopped him in the lineup as a 19-year-old last year, and he's just gotten better and better, and he's adding more layers to his game. Last year he didn't kill penalties. Now he's killing penalties. Last year he was playing about 15 minutes a night. This year I've got him up to 20 in the playoffs, and I think leading our forwards in ice time. Just the more I give him, the better he gets, and he's going to be a special player for a long time in this league.
And you got some youngsters on this team. Logan only played 24 games in the regular season. He's been a big player for you guys in the playoffs too, and you're asking a lot out of him. When did you know he was ready for more on his plate right away?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, Logan Stankoven and Thomas Harley on defense for us are two other young players that are playing huge roles for us. With Stankoven, he led the American League in scoring before we called him up. I think he probably could have come up earlier than he did. We knew he was going to be an effective NHL player. We had injury. We didn't have any injuries, and the cap was a factor. So I think the extra time helped him, and he got up for me the perfect amount of games. It wasn't 5 or 10 where, he still wasn't comfortable. It was 24, and he feels comfortable, and he's adding something to us every night. And one of the biggest stories of young players in the league is Thomas Harley, a young defenseman for us who led our defense scoring in goals this year. I think he had 15, more than Heiskanen, and he plays in all situations, skates like the wind. He's been invaluable too.
And I know you got to run, so last thing I'll ask you, Pete DeBoer, as you have the Stars and the Oilers going up in the Western Conference Final. Really do appreciate Coach joining us. We talked about youngsters. I know you coach Pavelski now. This is the second time coaching him. Jamie Benn is Mr. Dallas. Just how about the Grizzly vets, I guess, on this team?
Yeah, we got a great mix. You got those young kids, and then you've got that group of older veterans, Pavelski, Suter, Ben, who have had great careers and have done everything but win a Stanley Cup. And otherwise, Segi did in Boston as a rookie, but it was so long ago that he says it doesn't really count anymore. He's considering himself one of those guys again. But they want nothing more than to win it, and they're willing to do anything in order to play a part in that. They've all taken less ice time, less special teams time in order to let some of these young guys flourish. And as a result, we've got a better team for it, and just fabulous leadership.
Coach, appreciate the time. Can't thank you enough for doing this, and good luck.
Thanks, Zach. Always a pleasure catching up with you.
You got it. Thanks so much. There he is, Pete DeBoer, the head coach of the Dallas Stars, joining us once again back in the conference final. We'll see if he get 4 wins and go back to a Stanley Cup final. We'll take a timeout. We will return with a little news brief update to some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. But let's get the latest Infinity Sports Network update first with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, the Celtics had high expectations, as they always do, and are back in the conference finals. They're joined by the Pacers, who have defied expectations. Indiana came into the postseason as the 6th seed, but advanced with a win over the injury-depleted Bucks before outlasting the Knicks in 7 games. And Tyrese Halliburton, the engine that drives this team, said their depth has been a huge key so far.
We got the best bench in the NBA.
Okay.
So we're the deepest team in the NBA. We got 5-6 guys ready on the bench at all times, ready to answer the call when need be. I think that's what separates from everybody. We just big shout out to our bench. That they really get our energy going.
The Celtics are hoping to have Kristaps Porzingis, who has been out with a strained calf. The Western Conference Finals will begin tomorrow night in Minnesota with the Wolves hosting the Mavericks, while the Conference Finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs open tomorrow night in the East. The Nashville Predators today, in a salary dump, have sent defenseman Ryan McDonough back to Tampa Bay for a second-round pick next year, and the two teams swapped late-rounders. The Phillies host the defending champion Rangers tonight with 8-0. Ranger Suarez on the mound for the Phils, who have won 3 in a row and have baseball's best record at 34-14. I'm Rich Ackerman.
You make the call. 855-212-4227. When you want to talk to us, call 855-212-4227.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. This portion of the show is brought to you by Wesley Financial. Stuck in a timeshare and want out? Contact Wesley Financial Group now and get a free timeshare exit information kit at wesleyfinancialgroup.com. It's time to update you on the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. Let's get to a news brief.
Extra, read all about it. Extra, read all about it.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
All righty, let's start off with Aaron Rodgers. He had a pretty big choice to make this offseason that every quarterback, of course, has to make.
Yeah, I love Bobby. We had a couple really nice conversations, but there were really two options. It was retire and be his VP or keep playing. And I want to keep playing.
I love how he calls him Bobby. So RFK Jr. asked Aaron Rodgers to be his VP candidate, something he would not have won even if he ran on the ticket with Aaron Rodgers, with the RFK Jr. So the choice was be vice president or have a chance to really not have a chance to be vice president or keep on playing for the Jets. That is just an unreal cut. When the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers, did they ever think those words would come out of his mouth? I could either try to be VP or be the quarterback of the team. That would have been one of the craziest endings to an NFL career. Why did that guy Rodgers retire? Oh, to try to go be vice president of the United States. Jeez Louise. And then when he doesn't win, would he then have a triumphant return at the end of the Jets season to try to save him? Oy, oy, oy. Here is Drew Rosenhaus. He's not the agent for Tua Tagovailoa, but we know the legendary agent is Drew Rosenhaus. WSVN TV on Tua's contract situation.
I think it has to be in the ballpark of Jared Goff. To me, they're comparable players. I think when you look at Tua's statistics comparable to Goff, they're pretty close. And I would be surprised if it's not a similar deal. It's hard to have a successful season when your leader isn't all in. So I think he's got all the leverage in the world, and I expect a deal to get done by training camp.
Here's the thing. If I'm the Dolphins and if I'm the Jaguars, right? Tua's entering the 5th year of his rookie contract. That's a 5th-year option. And then Trevor Lawrence going into his 4th year. Both of those guys, people are saying they're due for contract extension, so you have to pay them north of $50 million. I'm telling Tua, and I'm telling Trevor, you play this year. And you play excellent football, then we'll give you the deal. Like, in all likelihood, the Dolphins are going to end up paying Tua. And the Jaguars are going to end up paying Trevor Lawrence. It could cost you a few more million per year next year, but Tua Tagovailoa has been up and down. This past year, he had the statistics of a top 5 quarterback, but I didn't think he was a top 5 quarterback in the league. Trevor Lawrence, first year, got screwed by Urban Meyer. Second year, played really well. And third year, he was hurt. So I'm not rushing to give either an extension right now, but time is coming to make that decision. You don't have to make it right now. You can have good faith negotiations and not give the deal. They want to take a little less, then maybe you get the deal done now. But I'm telling both players, show me why you earn that money this year and go earn it and why you should get that money, and then I'll gladly pay you. Here is Brian Callahan, the new coach of the Tennessee Titans, on Tennessee attempting to keep Derek Henry this offseason. This is on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast via Barstool.
They had touched base. Rand had a relationship with him, obviously being there for a year, and they went back and forth on what the money would look like, and we just knew we had the holes that we had to fill. The money would be allocated initially elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And the running back market went pretty good. I mean, there were some guys that got paid. It was higher money than I think maybe we had projected to start across the league for the running back position. And that's good for those guys. That's great. And so when you get into those positions where, we're trying to fill multiple holes in a free agency period, it's like, where do you want to allocate the money? And how do you want to spend it? Mm-hmm. And I think that I would have been absolutely open to Derek coming back. I think it felt like Derek was ready for something new. And then the money part, when it happened, those conversations go back and forth. And ultimately, it was, for both parties, probably the best decision at the end of the day for him and for us.
I literally raised my eyebrows during that whole response. I wanted to roll my eyes. It was a good marriage, Tennessee and Derek Henry. Derek wanted out. You guys wanted out. It ran its course. You guys are at a different stage where he's in right now. He's at the back end of his career. You guys trying to rebuild this team. And I don't want to say you didn't need him, but it was time for him to go somewhere else. And you don't overpay at that position. And it's that simple. Let's go to Bryce Young on making the jump from year 1 to year 2, a dreadful year 1, now trying to rebound in year 2.
We definitely have some new stuff, some stuff that, for me, it's just been a good opportunity to learn and step back and, look at things from a different perspective. You look at football from one lens for a long time, and then, you get super locked in with whatever the way is of, specific coaching staff. And, this is new energy, so a lot of new philosophy. So for me, it's just about taking all that coaching. I trust them and learning from them.
The owner of the Panthers is a pig in David Tepper. I can't stand that dude. But I want to root for Bryce Young this year. I want to see the redemption of Bryce Young this year. They beefed up that offensive line. You got a little extra talent around him in the wide receiver position. I hope he bounces back this year, but it's tough to trust that organization. Here is Dave Canales, new coach of the Panthers, and what he likes so far, what he's been seeing out of Bryce Young.
Deep ball, short intermediate. He's a really accurate passer. I think one of the things that I love is I can really focus in on his footwork and his base and the mechanics of where his eyes are at when I know the ball's hitting the receivers. And so, for the last couple of weeks, been throwing on air. I don't have to worry about where the ball's going. He's very accurate.
And let's go to Charvarius Ward. He was asked on the Up and Adams show on their upcoming Week 1 matchup against the Jets. Nothing like some smack talk led by Ward of the 49ers in May when you have a game getting played in September, but get your popcorn ready.
How do you pick off Aaron Rodgers? What's the secret?
How?
Yeah.
He gotta give me opportunity. I'm pretty sure I'm probably gonna be following Garrett Wilson around. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna follow Garrett around. So he they big dog. I'm the big dog in the city. So we gonna see Miss K.
You can't say the guy's name so quickly, Garrett Wilson, and then go, that's his name, right? Like, for example, there's been times, and I pretty much know almost everyone we work here, but there's been some days where they bring someone in, I didn't know that person was going to be working on the show, and I don't remember the person's name or haven't seen the person's name, and there'll be days where I'm, looking at that person, and then I just won't say. It happened one time, to be clear. And then when I usually do the intro, I, mention who's working on the show. I'll be like, Ryan Botcher today, Stu Kovacs, and that day I just didn't say anything. And I said to Sam through the day Stu was out. This was a year and a half ago. When I think I was filling in on this show, actually. Before, I said we're going to make you the host of the show. And I was like, who is this person that I'm working with? I forget I knew the person's last name, but didn't know the person's first name. So, if I sat there and I was like, the last name of the person, wait, what's your first name? You can maybe get that to pass off. But when you go, yeah, I'll be guarding Garrett Wilson. That's his name, right? Garrett Wilson? Come on, you know who Garrett Wilson is. Don't be an A-bleep. Let's go to Paul Feinbaum on the impact not using the transfer portal is having on Dabo Swinney at Clemson. This is on McElroy and Kublik. This is on Jocks FM. Love those guys, Greg McElroy and Cole Kublik.
It is catching up to him as we speak. I'm talking about people that graduated from Clemson, people who are Clemson fans, and I run into a lot of them based on where I live. And they don't think Dabo Swinney is going to be there a long time. When I mean a long time, I mean 3 to 5 years. I think his time is nearly up. To me, he is falling so far behind. And that doesn't mean they can't have a good program. That is, if you call 9-3 or 8-4 or maybe an occasional 10-2 a good program. But that's not the same school that went to 6 consecutive CFPs a couple of years ago that played for 4 national championships. I think that part of it is over.
Yeah, they'll probably make another college football playoff again in Dabo's time because there's 12 teams now. But I don't think they'll ever win a national championship again. And Dabo's stubborn, and we'll see how much longer he'll be the coach of Clemson. He's still a very good coach, still a top 5 coach in the sport. But him not adapting to the times is hurting that program from being elite again. Let's go to Mike Greenberg. I have not heard this. This is on the ESPN. But the slug line here is that Mike Greenberg compares the face of the NBA to, and then it says on my list, ... horn. I don't think this is a typo, but let's listen up.
Face of the NBA is one of those things like in court definition of pornography. You just know it when you see it. Wow. I mean, that's an old expression. That's not, I'm just making that up.
I think we're the two older guys. We're the
You know
young people.
I'm familiar with that.
I was like, what?
I'm not ready for that. It was a Supreme Court.
Not this early in the morning.
You know it when you see it. Like, you don't have to argue about it. You just know it.
Guess they need to talk about porn on Get Up so people actually get up to watch the show. Dun-dun-dun. Huh? That is a Mike Greenberg. Can we check his browser history? Why is he talking about porn when talking about the face of the NBA? Oy, that was weird. Finally, here's Caitlin Clark on starting her WNBA career 0-4.
Obviously, everybody's disappointed, but, it's not going to do us any good to all just hang our heads and pout about why we didn't win. It's just, you got to go back and watch the film. But at the same time, we did a lot of really good stuff, especially in the fourth quarter, the momentum that we found. We got to stop fouling at the end of shot clocks. They made some tough baskets on us. But we were right there. So I think it's like you got to keep your head up, but you also.
So there you go. That's Caitlin Clark. I was watching the end of that game last night. I was hoping she was going to make a late three. I think, is it Boston, I think, is the name of the player she plays with. She just missed a layup. I was watching that game last night, and, unfortunate. I was hoping that Caitlin Clark was going to get an opportunity. Leah Boston, I believe. All righty. Anyway, fun show today. Big thanks, Cedric Maxwell, Derek Stepan, Peter DeBoer, each and every one of you. We will talk mañana, everybody, at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Botcher Stu, thank you. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.